Righty. I hereby call the 2306th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item is the Letting Library Artists and Donors Recognition, a resolution, and this will be introduced by our very happy library director, Katie Newell.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to call out our donors, the people who contributed to the library project, which is open now. It's a soft opening today so far, and I counted this before I left. 942 people had come through our doors this afternoon. 9 o'clock, there was at least 12, 15 people waiting outside. Wow. And as we're letting those people in, people are still coming up the street, and it's like, this is really nice. I walked through several times. One time I came across a whole group of teens, not in the teen room, but just sitting out at the chairs, and you know, everywhere I walked there were people just sitting. And one of the staff members came in and she said, this is like so electric. You know, and I was like, yeah, this is just the beginning. This is wonderful. The community is responding, and so we're all just totally thrilled to pieces. But part of what makes this place so special is the artwork that we have. People went through like the children's room and just were fascinated with the artwork that Joe Thurston had done. And then there's the dividing wall, which Joe designed and got different artists to put in. And we want to make sure that this is remembered. And, you know, 50 years from now, these council resolutions will be around. I won't be, you know, so, and my memory would be shot anyway if I was 50 years from now. So we're doing this. There's also Jeremy's painting. It's up here. Jeremy O.K. Davis. He is actually going to be on Oregon Art Beat on the 9th. Cool. Just a little plug for Jeremy there. But
on tonight, you said?
No, January 9th.
Okay.
So his set his interview is only 8 minutes, but I think it's still worth trying to catch him on there. But so this picture of Florence Letting is 5 by 7 feet, not a little picture. It dominates the wall when you walk in. It's on the left. You can see it from the street on Harrison when you're driving around. It just looks stunning. Yes. And beside it is a history of the Letting family and the library. So it's just a wonderful feature when you first walk into the library. Am I up and doing this? Yeah.
And it includes a great biography, I thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a nice
short, but
it was very, Jordan, our Jordan, who works for the city, he put together that for us.
Great job.
Yeah,
He did. He did a wonderful job. This is in the children's story time, and this again was Joe Thurston's vision. And then you can see the mural behind of the river, and that's the Willamette as it goes in front of Milwaukee. You can see on the left there, that little cutout of white, that's Elk Rock Island. So it's the Willamette as it flows by Milwaukee. And then we have the oak tree leaves, and we have the dogwood, and there's maple, but it's just everything that's in Milwaukee.
Did they have a story time today?
No, they didn't.
No,
they
they're
don't
waiting.
do story times in January. They take this month off.
Oh, okay.
And, but you might as well have had one because there was always kids in there. They didn't need a story time. You know, they were having fun. Let's see. I forget what pictures I sent. Oh, and then this is in the teen room, which we never had before. So now we have a teen room, and we had Dark Horse offered to do this original art mural for us, and that is in the the teen room, and it covers a whole wall.
Yeah.
So part of our scavenger hunt on Saturday for our ribbon cutting is going to be name those characters. And so
Better start doing your homework.
yes. So we got them because we didn't know who they all were. So, but they will be able to do that. We're going to have some T-shirts made up to commemorate the mural. Don't know if they'll make it by Saturday, but they will be coming, and Dark Horse has offered us that right to do that. So they've been very, very supportive of the library. They gave this to us, they installed it for us. So this is a huge contribution by Dark Horse.
And you can see it as you walk up the sidewalk.
Yes, yes. And it's another, piece that has drawn people in to see this. And then this is our donor wall. We had just an amazing contributions by people in the community that donated, and it's not just the people in Milwaukee, it was also the state of Oregon, it was the Friends group, it was the county gave us $1 million to start off, and with
We paid a bond that funded that $1 million. It was not largesse from the county. Yeah.
The citizens of Milwaukee are the ones to be thanked.
Yes. Yes.
We did have seed money of $1 million from the county, and then they came up with the bond that made this all possible. So the citizens are listed up here because they are the ones who did this library for us. And I'm just so excited that they are getting the building that they deserve. It is just beautiful, and it's what we needed here. And, it's like, okay, we're setting this bar high now. Every new building here now has to come up. But we did want everybody, these are the people. So when you walk in, you have Florence and her history on the right, on the left side, and on the right side is our donor wall. And we just want to make sure that everybody does know that we could not have done this without everybody contributing as they did. And, it's just the whole city, all the departments here, every single one touched this project. And so it's just been a wonderful experience for all of us. And so I thank you. And, so you get to read the resolution.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, recognizing the artists and designers and donors who worked on and supported the New Letting Library. Whereas the city believes that libraries are a critical resource for all, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, orientation, gender, identity, or socioeconomic status. And whereas in May 2016, Milwaukee voters passed a bond measure to rebuild the Letting Library to better serve our community and the North Clackamas area. And whereas the New Letting Library is a community centerpiece that features locally produced works of art that highlight our heritage, shared values, and bold character. And whereas the city wishes to thank the many talented artists, artisans, and designers for their devotion to the New Letting Library, including Joe Thurston, Cheyenne Malcolm, and Lane Walkup, Teresa Aman, Form XYZ Studio, Arden Lee, Matt Creaser, and Greg Archuleta, Alice Edwards and family, Aaron Bush, Paul Norberg, Jeremy Okai Davis, Carlos de Anda, and Luis Guerrero. The Felt Hat, Hacker Architects, Place Landscape Architecture, and Juno Lockman. And whereas the city wishes to thank the many individuals and organizations that generously donated resources to the New Letting Library, including the State of Oregon, Clackamas County, Dark Horse Comics, Swinnerton Construction, the Weiss Foundation, and Friends of Letting Library, and the members of the greater Milwaukee community. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, on behalf of the people of Milwaukee and all who cherish the Letting Library, express its deep appreciation for all who worked on and supported the new library building in the hopes that it may continue to serve as a transformational resource for generations to come.
Thank you.
Thank you
I hope
very much.
everyone
There's an action.
will be at our ribbon cutting on Saturday, 10 o'clock. We're recruiting. Jennifer said something about our kids. I'm like, bring them, put them up front. We've got lots of kids there. So, thank
We'll
you.
be formally thanking a lot of people in a lot more depth at the event, but this really is our way of making sure that in future librarians, future city managers, future councils can figure out who did that amazing piece of art that's sitting right here in the Letting Library, and it's really the only way for us to assure that it's documented.
And it actually is a motion item, so
I'll move to approve the resolution recognizing the artists and designers and donors who worked on and supported the new Letting Library building.
I'll second.
And moved and seconded to approve the resolution recognizing the artists, designers, and donors who worked on and supported the new Letting Library. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
Thank you to both Layla and to Katie
Congratulations.
for an
Thank you.
incredible job well done.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good job, everybody. This is quite the team effort. All right. Tonight's consent agenda includes the minutes of the November 12th, 2019 study session, November 12th, 2019 special session, the November 19th, 2019 walking tour, the November 19th, 2019 work session, and the November 19th, 2019 regular session. It includes a resolution designating the first and third Tuesdays of each month as the scheduled council meeting dates, a resolution designating the Clackamas Review, the Oregonian, and the Daily Journal of Commerce as the papers of record, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Tetra Tech, Inc. for $470,120 for professional supervisory control and data acquisition, SCADA systems upgrade services. So are we not going to put that on the, okay, I see. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
Yes, there's one.
Say what?
Did we already pull?
It's already pulled.
already been,
I
yeah.
didn't pull E. I didn't even talk about E.
It's the next item on the agenda.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not sure you got a
Anyone need
motion. I was about to, and I moved to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passed unanimously. All right. The next item was pulled from the original consent agenda. It's a property purchase for Meek Street Stormwater Project resolution. And this will be introduced by Assistant City Engineer Jennifer Garbely.
So did I officially pull it? Am I running this boat?
I think so. Yeah, I think I technically pulled it.
Okay.
You're good.
So I'm here because we have a proposition to purchase the Oak facility. We are calling this phase the south phase, and then we have a north phase of the project to actually complete the overall, which goes from Roswell to 37th. At this time, we're only proposing to purchase the Oak facility and go out to bid on next week, basically, January 14th or 16th, depending on this decision today, to construct the south phase. The north phase, we are looking at some other options instead of purchasing more additional property from the railroad. So, questions? What concerns do you have?
Well, and I think the only other piece that we also wanted to make sure, if you don't mind me adding, is that the parcel that we're talking about purchasing has an old Phase 1 on it. It does not have a recent Phase 1 on it. So we wanted to make sure that you understand that sorry, do you want to complete all those thoughts and sentences?
Yeah, let's have a little more detail on that.
Sure. So in October 17th, 2017, we actually did environmental report a phase 2 for the site. It was a boring down to 16.5 feet. They took samples at 3 locations. They had very small detects, nothing that was above a DEQ requirements. They could have actually naturally been in the soils as far as the levels that we were reaching. The site has not been used by the railroad. It has just been a vacant lot that has trees on it, has been growing. So at this time, there just hasn't been any activity since then. We came to you in February 2018 to actually start the negotiation process with the railroad. Yes, it has taken about 2 years to get that to a level where we're at today. So
we didn't do an updated Phase 2 simply because we didn't find much on there. We do know that we ongoing may have contamination, but it could be from any number of sources. We believe that we're protected as much as we're going to be based on the past, that we didn't do another Phase 1 or Phase 2. As you remember, when we were doing the TriMet lot, we had to go through the Phase 1 and Phase 2 and then had to immediately enter into a PPA for the cleanup. That's why we went through that process. Here, we're not seeing that a cleanup is needed, and that's why staff is more comfortable proceeding without an updated Phase 1 and Phase 2. But we wanted to call it out just so that you know we haven't done one, and typically you would do those within a 6-month period of the purchase. Is that fair?
yeah, and if you're not comfortable with that and we need to do an update, then I need to know that immediately, and it will delay our project. And I won't be able to go out to bid until we do that. So there's a high risk there, and if you want to know. So we've got developments that are in the process. This project we need to complete in order for them to connect to the system. So they could potentially walk if we don't have it completed.
Well, and I also saw that this is an area that has suffered ongoing stormwater retention issues and flooding on Harrison. So it's not even just about making
Yeah, I was
the
surprised
development
by that.
possible.
I didn't realize there were flooding issues on Harrison. I've never witnessed that. Where are the flooding problems on Harrison?
Get on a bike.
So the location at Harrison, right before it crosses the railroad tracks, is where it all comes down from our old 31st Street, up Harrison, 32nd, Railroad, all of that drains to this Harrison Street and goes out to our outfall right here. So this project, Meek, is to alleviate a lot of that and send it to Roswell. These ponds are not water quality facilities, they're really detention ponds, so we can slow down the water in our pipe system and make it flow at a better rate, so we can manage it a little better. It will have some water quality aspects on those low storm events, because we are planting some things, but when we have those big storm events, it is designed to help hold those.
I can add one item on that too. So just last month in December, we actually had a higher intensity rainstorm where we had surcharging in the storm sewer on Harrison, where water was bubbling up out of the storm sewer.
Wow.
So we do have that happen.
Yeah, you'll see on the manhole right up here by the Waldorf School.
Right.
On a big storm day, it's just squirting straight out of the manhole. It's pretty wild.
Okay.
Agreed.
Well, it is all downhill. Yeah, I could see that, yeah.
So, yeah, it's
If you're
a
comfortable.
2-year-old. I mean, what's the likelihood that something horrible happened between? So I'm totally comfortable.
We just wanted to make sure we called it out and gave you an opportunity because it wasn't in the staff report and it was information we discussed after the fact. So as long as you're comfortable, we would recommend you proceed.
Yeah.
As I say, if the railroad had had a spill there, we would know it.
We would have heard.
We would have heard.
We would have heard, since it's right in front of the public safety building. I had one other question, which was, this area is something that people walk across all the time now. Maybe not in the winter, maybe it's mucky in the winter, but in the summer, definitely people cut across walking. There aren't sidewalks around it. I mean, there's a sidewalk on Oak, but there's not a sidewalk on Monroe or whatever that is there. Is there any plan to We'll do Monroe Street eventually, but I mean.
Yeah, and I think that's coming in with that project. So I'm not putting in a sidewalk at this point with that property. We are putting in some benches to create a spot where people can come and sit and enjoy the area, because it is an open spot and it'll be planted and it'll be nice, especially if we get the Monroe Street apartments next door.
I also just confirmed with Denny that we're doing the mini transportation study right at that intersection. That this will now be a city parcel that can be included in that study. So we'll make sure that it's included in that for future discussions. Its primary has to be for flood, but we can look at whether or not there are iterations of how we get people through there. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you ready for a motion?
Any other questions or comments or concerns or? No? Okay, sure.
Move to approve the resolution authorizing the acquisition of property on Oak Street from Union Pacific Railroad.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution authorizing the acquisition of property on Oak Street from the Union Pacific Railroad. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Good job.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
go out to bid.
All right.
Okay.
It doesn't appear to be anybody unless some staff member would like to make an audience.
I think their boss would frown on that, but.
I do have a response from a past.
Just
if
gonna
you're
ask.
comfortable.
Go ahead.
So at the December 17th meeting, Mr. Chris Ortolano asked the city to hire a facilitator to engage with the community on the Monroe Apartments development. Before responding to that specific request, I'd like to provide a little bit of background. I'm going to read it tonight just to make sure that I capture all the things that have happened on this project correctly. For those watching, the Monroe Street Apartments application is for a development located on a long-desired opportunity site as identified in the Central Milwaukee Land Use and Transportation Plan. Residential development along this long vacant site will hopefully result in a more vibrant commercial activity center nearby. I think everybody knows that that's really close to the old Albertson site. So that's where these individuals will be hopefully spending money and spending time. Staff remain committed to fair and transparent process for both developers and concerned citizens. As such, city staff have taken the following actions to facilitate an open, fair, and consistent process at this location to date. They have met with the NDAs. JDA, the project developer, met with both Ardenwald and Hector Campbell NDAs to present the project. JDA, city staff, and DEQ staff held a public information meeting about the project on September 9th, 2019 at the Public Safety Building. The staff have also set up a Central Milwaukee website to make it easier to find information not only on the Monroe Street Apartments project, but adjacent projects like Hillside and Monroe Greenway, knowing that all these things are interlocked. They've met with concerned stakeholders throughout the process on multiple occasions. The developer has also separately and jointly met with citizens throughout this process. We've responded to numerous email and phone inquiries about the project and the review process. We've hired a transportation consulting firm to provide review, then worked with the developer and their consultants to facilitate an alternative design to the Monroe Greenway section adjacent to the site in response to concerns raised by this community. We've extended the public comment period by 18 days beyond the typical Type 2 comment period. During the comment period, we posted on the application webpage all of the public comments that have come in as they have come in to make sure that we're being fully transparent about what the public is saying about this site. Staff has posted application materials prior to deeming the application complete, and the DEQ staff provided specific contact information for any and all inquiries, as well as fact sheets to provide accurate information about the site. While I've seen the value of third-party facilitation firsthand, and I actively deploy it as a tool when needed, I believe that in this instance it could create confusion and undermine the role of the planning director and the planning commission. ORS 197.307 requires the city to provide a clear and objective path for developers creating residential units. Providing a mediator would be in conflict with the state statute. Additionally, part of providing a transparent and fair process is timeliness. While there are certainly people who are not entirely happy with the proposed project, the time has come for us to move forward, for us to meet our legal obligations. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next item is the City Hall Blue Ribbon Committee Formation and Community Engagement Plan. This will be introduced by our City Recorder, Scott Stoffer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Pleasure to be here this evening. I'm here solo to present. I've got some folks who can back me up. My partner in crime on this is on a beach where it's sunny right now. I wish Allison well.
Well, Layla raised her glass from back there, so I don't.
Is this why you've got airplanes on your bow tie?
Sharks, actually.
Oh, sharks.
Also on theme.
Oh, boy.
Not intentional. Also getting over a cold, so forgive me if I do that a time or two during the presentation. But the purpose of this item is to provide an update and follow up on our proposal for how to address repurposing the future of this building as City Hall. And yeah, there's a new acronym that has been born in our world of government, and it's part of the City Hall Blue Ribbon Committee, CHBRC. So just a quick review of the project. Chirbrick. I'm trying to go on the brick road, but it didn't get very far yet.
I like Chirbrick.
Chirbrick. Maybe a bird could be the logo, but I don't know. Working on that. Quick recap, we all know that we are acquiring a new City Hall down the street on Main Street, and at the same time, we are very aware that this is a historic and significant parcel in our community, and so we are running, as we outlined before, we're running 2 concurrent processes. The bottom row here is how the city is working on acquiring the new Advantis building down the street, and then the top is as outlined by Allison in much greater detail on November 19th, the process for figuring out the future of this building, running a public engagement process that'll help us define the community values and priorities, which will set up our request for proposals process, which will then set up the required public hearings for disposing of property. We've been through that a number of times, different things. And then ultimately, in 2 years' time, 2.5 years' time, the ideal is we will have a future mapped out for this property when we move down the street and take possession of the Advantis building. So that's just the background of where
Before you move on, I understood from Allison's presentation, I just want a nod of confirmation, that declare the property surplus is something we do when we sell something, and we may or may not sell this. We might lease it, correct?
That's accurate.
That is correct. Okay.
That's accurate.
I just wanted to make sure.
That's in there. We're still in that phase. I mean, we've fleshed these things out a little more than we had when we were meeting with you in November. But that's still, that's when those things would happen, depending on our public engagement and where we're heading. But yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. So what we heard from the council back in November is that a committee should be formed, and we've went with the verbiage of Blue Ribbon Committee to be formed to take the public engagement, to take the public input as to what we're going to do. I'll take all the ideas and start with our values and the goals for the project. So we're forming a committee. That's what we took away last time. And as a review, I didn't list it here, but the members of the committee, there were 14 positions identified, 1 city councilor, representatives from 3 of our boards, the Planning Commission, Design and Landmark Committee, and the Tree Board, 1 member from the North Clackamas School District Board, 1 representative of the Milwaukee Historical Society, 1 downtown business representative, which was not necessarily the Downtown Milwaukee Business Association, but a downtown business owner or representative, and then 7 representatives of our neighborhoods, not necessarily NDA members, but geographic representation from our 7 neighborhoods. So that's what was outlined at the last meeting, and then it was also brought up to me this evening that we might want to think about adding other committee members. Other committees could be represented as well. The Arts Committee and the Library Board might be.
I was thinking more PARB. But yeah. We originally talked about that. No, but possibly yes. And part of that discussion came up in counselors' discussions with school board members, about the property.
Right, since that is the issue in the deed.
Staff has no concerns.
No.
It's totally up to you.
Yeah.
So PARB makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of reason to have a library board member on there, but PARB or Arts Committee both kind of make some sense to me.
So the council would be okay if we got a maximum of 16,
I would.
Adding
adding
PARB.
PARB and arts.
That works,
Art
yeah.
mob, yeah.
I would suggest, too, that where it mentions the 8 at-large representing the neighborhood districts and downtown Milwaukee business owners, that business owners or employees.
Or representatives, okay.
Or
yeah.
representative, however you want to word it, but not just limit it to.
Right.
I mean, you might have somebody, I can think of a couple people offhand that aren't the owners, but they're extremely involved.
Right.
So-
And I think based on the conversation we had back in November, that was absolutely the spirit. Same kind of spirit as when we talked about the neighborhoods and not necessarily NDA officials, but that our 7 neighborhoods would be represented. Yeah,
Right.
but we'll make sure that's not necessarily the business owner, but it could be representative of business. Sure. So we're at 16, acknowledging also there may be some overlap with these folks might be from Llewellyn, also on PARB, and might be a business owner, I don't know,
So
but we'll
it's
make sure
16 or
that
15? Do we have
16.
just one?
We had 14,
art.
Barb and art.
parks and arts,
Oh, Parks and Art. I'm sorry, I missed that. Art.
which it makes sense because the sculpture garden is very much part of this
Exactly.
property.
Well, and the building itself.
Yes,
Building it,
right.
that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the positions we've identified. Any other thoughts on membership while we're here?
I would just, and I'm going to bring this up on the next one too. It's not about who the members are, but I would say something in the description of, sort of what is expected of them, that some outreach to their neighborhoods may be part of that.
I agree.
Sure.
Yeah. Or some participation in neighborhood meetings may
Go
be
back to report
part of
to.
what we expect them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have to be somebody who attends NDAs now, but they need to be somebody who will be attending their NDA.
Yes.
Going
At least a few times going forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think when we get to one of the next slides, it's called out that a lot of what we're going to be doing, which is sort of some of this public engagement work that the city is doing writ large, is creating community experts that'll help us, go out back to their neighborhoods or their businesses or back to their boards and help explain the situation and move forward. So, absolutely. Okay, so we have our members. We put together, based on things that the city has recruited for in the past, an application. There was one in the packet, but there's a revised version available on the dais, and they're outside here if people are here in the building, but it'll be online as well tomorrow. Just formatted, basically stretched out a little bit onto a second page. We had Jordan review it for city's branding, so that's the big thing. I did receive one suggestion that made it to this revised this afternoon. Councilor Beatty suggested that the wording of an employee, when it asks, are you an employee in Milwaukee, the wording was didn't jive great, so we changed it to if so, where, and for how long. So there was a minor word change there, but other than that, this is what was in the packet, but just formatted, more or less. So if this is a good time, yeah.
So would these be for those 7 basically at-large positions? But the committees, so let's take, Arts Committee or PARB or the Design and Landmarks, they would select their own person, right? So that person wouldn't necessarily go through the application
Well,
process.
it would be good to have them fill it out because,
And then to
as he
know.
pointed out, there might be somebody, say,
From Llewellyn.
from the historic
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's good
part
information
of
to have.
one of
but
the
I just-
neighborhoods,
yeah.
and maybe we check that box.
Yeah.
But they would be, there's appointed, and then there's application process
Right.
nominees.
I would think so. I think for our at-large folks, we'll need them to fill that out so we can conduct interviews and.
Yeah, but I like the
council
idea of
make
the others
decisions.
filling it out
Yep.
too, because there will be some crossovers, and it will be important to know that.
Yep. I think it's a pretty straightforward application in terms of that stuff, so I would agree. I think that'd be it's a good tool. It'll be available online, hopefully tomorrow or later this week, and we'll send emails out and start asking folks to submit names.
Will you just have a stack downstairs?
We typically
Don't do that?
We are certainly not opposed to printing on demand if someone were to come and say, I don't have access to that.
I think for this one, it might actually, because it's City Hall.
Sure.
It might be good to have a stack at at City Hall available. I think people are going to be, as they hear more about this, they might just actually be dropping by.
I kind of wonder about putting some in the library, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, can do that.
Good idea.
I have a suggestion about on the application in the RU section under involved in your neighborhood district. I would like to add or other community organization. I think,
As another question?
no.
That's on the back.
It is,
That's
it
one of
is
the seconds
captured
on
in
the
the
question. on
Yeah,
the
it's
back.
captured in
That's
the
the second
narrative.
question on the back.
Yeah, I mean,
I would like to know the NDA piece personally.
well, I guess maybe, I would, well, then I guess I would want to add to it. So,
We definitely need to know the NDA.
Yes.
We
yeah.
definitely need to ask.
Right, because we want to know, right, but you're not going to get that with that question.
Not necessarily.
You're
Right.
not, if they're not going to the NDA meetings, then you're not going to get the neighborhood they live in
We should
with that
probably ask,
question.
which neighborhood are you in? Of course, a lot of people don't know. I mean, you're not really. We're asking, are you involved in your neighborhood district?
That's
And
different.
next to it says, if so, which one?
No, it doesn't ask
But if
you
they
which
say
one you
no-
live in.
No, then you're not going to answer.
Oh, I get it. I'm sorry.
How about under,
Thank you.
after mailing address, because that's kind of where my mind would be when I'm writing my address, I think
Yeah,
about,
so you just,
we can say Milwaukee neighborhood. I guess it might be if applicable, because some people might not. I think you could put none
I
if
think a lot of
that's,
people aren't going to know.
so,
I think we're going to spend time looking them up.
Yes.
Maybe.
But
interestingly,
if they can answer the question, great, saves somebody some time, right?
I think
May as well
folks-
ask the
Well, they
question.
might be
Yeah,
wrong.
if known.
That's a good point.
They might be wrong.
they could be wrong. And
Yes.
we have
We should
tools, mapping tools to
probably-
fix, to double check. How about we add an NDA question after, up at the top where the mailing address is, and then we can rewrite that involved with your neighbor, NDA or other community organizations. and
Or
that's the
I guess
chance.
maybe,
it's on the back.
I guess I would ask that here's my concern. I guess I would want to know it up sort of in the sort of demographic information, like you're basically a general name, not, all that. I don't want to carve it out separately from other community organizations. Is that a priority? Are we prioritizing the NDA organization over, some other organization that's heavily involved in this community and might have a really strong interest in the city hall? To me, like, putting it on the application this way elevates it in a way that putting it on a, like, open-ended question on the back doesn't. So that's my concern. I think we can put them both in the same place in either one.
Well, I mean, we can add this to the list back here, but I actually think we should be. I think calling it out encourages people to engage in their NDA. They're like, oh, that's kind of important. That's something the council asks about. Oh, maybe I should check out my NDA. I think it's a way to encourage future participation, or at least encourage people to think about that. So,
A lot of people don't feel welcome at all of those meetings.
I don't think it's not like the thing where we're assigning points. We're not assigning points for this.
But we are definitely, we're on this application, it certainly looks to me like it's prioritized, and that could discourage someone from applying. Many studies have shown that some people will not even apply if they cannot check every single box on an application.
Well, you can't check every single box on here.
I thought that Scott's
Every
suggestion,
row.
yeah, I thought that Scott's suggestion got around this nicely because we are still gathering the same information by asking it up above, but we are avoiding that sense of prioritization. And it still gets people to think about, what neighborhood am I in? And if they don't know, that sets them down that path. And certainly anyone who's serving on this committee is going to know, and they're going to go to their NDA meetings. So we will achieve that goal in the end.
So we're, just to recap, adding the NDA question under the demographic part, and then we're leaving NDA and saying, or other community organizations? Is that where we're at?
If we're going to do that, I would drop it from here. I would put
Drop
Put it with the
NDA.
other.
NDA after mailing address, like you suggested, your NDA if known or something.
Right.
And then drop it here.
Put it
And
with
put
the other
it
one.
on the other list as the first thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Your participation and affiliation with your NDA or other.
Community,
blah,
civic.
blah, blah.
Civic, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to say involved with your neighborhood
District
or community?
association.
Or
Yeah.
just, okay.
Spell it out.
Spell it out.
Yeah, spell it out.
Right. We'll, on the back, we'll spell it out. But, so at the front, we'll say involved, are you involved with your community?
We're
No,
we're
that's
dropping it.
Dropping it.
Oh, dropping the whole
Question
thing.
altogether.
Yeah.
The whole thing. Oh,
We're just asking about neighborhood up in the name, home address.
Yeah.
strike.
And that way you still have the same amount of room taken up on the front?
Yeah, you
When
you
we
do.
were
say-
Your layout person is,
pulling it out, that was done.
Thank you. That addresses my concern entirely.
Anecdotally, I'll just say, having watched the applications come in for our boards and committees, people are getting better at knowing where they live. It's not universal, still have to correct, but they are. And even I'm like, whoa, is that really in, oh yeah, that is Lake Road or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So we have a learned community. All right, application. Anything else?
looks good.
Good? Okay. Moving on, so so the recruitment process, with this, I'm taking this council approval to post this application and start asking folks to apply. We'll have it up hopefully this week, and we'll send out an email that you guys know so you can help put those out there. Recruit through January and into early February. I believe Amy from my office has been in touch about identifying two Saturdays in February, Saturday mornings, to do interviews. This is part of that. The other one is the youth recruitment, and the other committee is what Denny will talk about next, the comp plan. So we've got some interview scheduling coming, and we'll proceed with recruiting. What else did I want to say? I think that's it.
Actually, the process, we still need council confirmation that the process works.
Right, we'll ask that at the very end. But, so once we have a committee together, we put together, and as outlined in the staff report, we put together its charges based on what you guys gave us feedback for last time. So the first big lift for this committee and what we'll be working on with them is helping them learn about the operational costs of running the building, maintaining the building, and the limits that the city has in terms of what the city can do going forward once we've acquired the Advantage building. Historic preservation requirements placed on this building, any government building older than 50 years, as we've all, through several different projects now, I've learned about that. And then the impact of market conditions on what could be possibly done. So there's going to be an educational process that Allison and I will be tapping our colleagues and other possible resources to help this group learn about the situation. And then the other big lift is developing project goals. So knowing all of that, which council has heard before, but we'll reiterate to this group, have them help us form what it is we want to see on this site. And as discussion has ranged, I mean, I think it's a pretty open book at the moment, and that's what the point of this committee is, to help us focus those goals. So that's the big lift. Part of the way we'll be identifying and articulating those goals is community outreach and engagement, which we're going to be looking to this group of people to help us with, as was just referenced, and as the group talked about, going back to the neighborhoods and their places they represent. So the goal for us is to have this group put together those important pieces, and I can't be as articulate as perhaps Layla can or Allison could, but the stuff, the details that inform the request for proposals. So this group will get us to that point where we're going to take their goals and we'll put that out in the RFP process. And then once the RFP process is up and running and we get responses, bids back, proposals back, our staff recommendation is that the entire Blue Ribbon Committee is not involved, but that certainly select members of that Blue Ribbon Committee are elected or appointed by that committee to represent them on a technical group that would then, with experts, review those proposals. So this committee will have a voice front-loading the RFP process and then definitely during the process. But it's important to staff to recognize that they're also technical experts and all kinds of things that I can't even imagine. People need to be involved in the process at that point.
Now, remind me, is this advisory to us, or is it just a straight pass-through? other than the council member that's on it?
It's advisory.
That is a great segue into the community engagement discussions we've been having around IAP2.
But I have a question really quick. The number 3 on the sort of the process of what the committee will be charged with doing, under the learn about state historic preservation requirements, is that also going to have a component of learning about the history of the building itself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear on that. It didn't
Sure.
spell it out.
Scott will never pass up
I
an
was going to
opportunity.
say,
I just want to make sure that,
No, I agree.
yeah. It's
100%.
not just about what historic, preservation requirements there are, but also
Right.
the history of the building and.
The legacy of public service that's been on this block for as long as since the 1850s. Absolutely, and I anticipate, I don't know who the Historical Society will nominate to be their voice on this committee, but I anticipate that whoever that is, I'd be happily working with them to make sure that they're, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to
No,
make
you're
sure I
great.
got that.
I don't, yeah, Kelly is here. One of the pieces of the IAP2 process, when we look at how we want to engage the public in each of those phases, you can get all the way to the point where you're actually handing the decision off to the community. What we've been looking at this is advisory. So what would happen, and please correct me everyone if I'm wrong, is that this group would get together, they'd start talking, we take some of that information out to the community, and that process hasn't been determined yet, but to get them feedback, this is what we're thinking, is this the right direction, and then that would feed into the RFP. We would bring the RFP back to you to say, this is what the body has come up with, this is what they're recommending, are you in alignment with this? We could skip that step if you felt like this really should be outside of you all and held by this committee, but I think it's probably valuable for the council to weigh in as sort of not only the owner, but the responsible party of the building.
Yeah.
So we would bring the RFP back, you would have a chance to say, we agree with these goals or don't agree with these goals. I think that if there is a point in there where you disagreed with the committee, we would recommend that you go back to the committee as a representative and talk about your reasoning, and then we would proceed with the release of the RFP. You can easily have a member of council sit on that process, or even a couple on this, because it really is a decision we've been trying to give back to the community and back to the elected officials. We haven't gotten that far yet, and I'd like to wait and see where we are once this has been underway. We've gone into that RFP process, and then talk to you about how you want to handle the rest of it. Is that fair? We've been really trying to make sure that it's clear to the community that staff has not predetermined an outcome. And so it's hard for me today, without knowing their feedback, knowing their goals, knowing how council responds to those goals, for us to say what the next step would be.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Okay.
And the formal decision processes are still council's to make, and, whatever, the process Ann outlined, it's still council's decision. Okay, so, our summary questions here, I think we probably know the answers to most of these, but just to confirm, council is comfortable with the proposed recruitment process? January, get it February, and then appointments set up in March. We went through the draft application. Any other comments on that? We're good. Committee charges, so it's learning about the situation and developing those goals. And then
Selecting a couple of members for the next step in the phase.
participating in the RFP.
Yeah.
Okay. And then anything else? Anything else that you want to say at this point? I'm kind of just excited to get it going. It's been talked about a long time. It's a historic moment for us as a community. We've had a lot of historic moments for our community, which is great. But
The library might be breaking a record right now.
cool. Well, if nothing else, then
Thank you.
Good job.
yes. So you will hear, maybe not in a council meeting session, but you will hear. There'll be an interview process. At least a couple you'll be involved in that. And so the next time that this might come to council may be in March with a slate of appointments to make, to confirm or consider.
Cool.
Cool.
thanks, Scott. And Allison.
Yes,
Even
and
if
Allison.
she is on a beach.
I don't know if she gets thanked while she's on a beach.
Yeah.
Hopefully she doesn't get chumped by a shark. I mean,
That's true.
Okay.
Okay. Our next item is Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee Formation and Community Engagement Plan. This is a discussion that will be introduced by our Planning Director, Denny Eckner.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. It's always tough to follow, Scott. I don't have a PowerPoint. I didn't provide you with a application form. But, you know, they're almost exactly the same. The questions are very similar, because I have done an application form now. After I saw that Scott had done one, I thought I better do one.
And I will give Allison 100% credit.
Then I would have the same feedback for your draft.
Yes, I thought that
As I
would be
do
the
for
case.
Scott's.
I was taking notes.
Thank you.
We talked about this back in November, on November 19th, and at that meeting, council expressed an interest in having a committee made up of CPAC members and some new members, and having experts come in, expert panelists come in and talk to the other panelists. What we're proposing right now is that type of setup. A council member, a planning commissioner, 6 members of the CPAC. I have 3 that have expressed interest right now. I think there will be 6 that would want to do it. And then 6 new people, and depending on the topic, we would bring others in. So for the housing discussion, we would bring some people in that have some housing background. For the discussion about environmental protection and tree protection, we would bring in an arborist or others that might be able to provide some insight. The focus of the work here is to implement the comp plan and provide detailed concepts for code writing. We don't want to ask this committee to write the code. We want to ask this committee, what are the details that need to be addressed in the code? And then let the Planning Commission do their work in working out the code language. That's our concept anyway. If you wanted to do it in some different way, we can, but I think that's probably the best way to use this group. The staff report included some criteria under which we might select members, and the questions that were in the application get indirectly at some of these things. Does the candidate's application express a strong statement of interest? That's in that application. Does the applicant demonstrate an understanding of community issues? Sort of depends what they write. These are similar questions to what we used when we did CPAC. So, does the candidate have access to a network that can help with community outreach? And that, again, is one of the things that I think we want this committee to do, is for them to be a conduit out to other organizations. Does that network help reach people who are often left out of the public involvement process or disadvantaged in some manner? Again, I don't know that our CPAC group really filled that role. I don't think we had applicants that did it, but it's important to keep in mind as we move forward. And if we want to somehow supplement that, I think we could adjust the process later to make sure we're doing that. I mean, what we did with the comp plan is we had a focus group with Spanish-speaking people. You know, we've done some other things like that. We always had translation services available at our open houses. So we were aware of that as we went forward before. And the final couple questions here. Does the candidate help diversify geographic representation of the committee? So just trying to make sure we're not concentrated in 1 or 2 neighborhoods. Are there socioeconomic or demographic factors that need to be considered? This is a way for us to just think about the questions that we can't ask in our application. As we worked on the CPAC, we also wanted to make sure we had as diverse a group as we could. And at that point, we talked about whether you could ask certain types of questions in the application. And here, I think this is just trying to keep that in mind as we go forward, but without a specific criterion or a specific question in the application. So those are that kind of spells out the thinking that went into this. It's modeled again after the CPAC process. The questionnaire that you got, or the application form that you got from Scott is also modeled after the CPAC application form.
So let me ask you about that. Now that you've kind of focused us on those questions, because I was like, where are those questions going to be? I would note that the 2 questions on the back, we've got the why you are interested question, which is a good open-ended question, and that'll hopefully elicit some of this info. But the one about describe your participation with groups, and then describe why you fall, you help us toward having a diverse committee, neither one of them actually say how, neither one of them actually ask them about their ability to outreach. I mean, I guess maybe that's implicit in the groups, that you would outreach to your groups, but it's not really said. So if we want them to be, does this network help reach people who are often left out, and have a network that can help with community outreach? I think both of those questions probably need some tweaking to get to that.
So I'm actually staring at my draft right now, and I had, for the second question, I had describe your participation and affiliation with your NDA, I just added that, or other community, civic, or professional organization, and how that experience would aid you in contributing to the planning process. So that's very similar language to what's in front of you. And so we could expand that question, I think, to add, to say, how will you reach out to these organizations?
Right.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I'm going to, Denny, you're not going to get it, but I'll email it to you right now. So Metro already does this, and we used this for the CET, advisory group, and they have a series of questions that I think that we can borrow from to make these better. And I took these directly from their webpage months ago, but they get to that. I mean, they ask, why are certain things, why are these values important to you? Describe your experience working collaboratively with people. Do you have connections? Do you have experience, skills? Talk about your ability to do that work. And so, this model is already there, and I think that we should use borrow this language and incorporate it into these questions to try to it's perfectly legal because it is not asking you forbidden questions, but it certainly is asking you what is your experience, and how might you contribute to the work of public outreach in a way that is more inclusive.
And I also like that they're shorter questions, because that long compound sentence, it can be difficult if English is not your first language.
You also might just answer one of the compound questions.
Right.
Frequently happens, yeah.
That does happen, yeah.
Right. So yeah, it is the basic, how will this experience or this membership help you contribute to this committee, but also how does it help you engage in our outreach effort? I mean, it's those two.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
We were trying to keep it limited, just to not have like a zillion questions that someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these can be.
And we're asking for volunteers, so we can't expect people to be experts in outreach. Part of what happens when you serve on a committee for the city is you get a greater understanding of what it means to talk to people about stuff. That's part of becoming a citizen expert. So I guess I'm saying that for anyone who's listening and feeling intimidated and like they aren't qualified. You are qualified. We just are hoping that this encourages people to think about how the work happens.
Right.
Yeah. Do you then trust us to pull this together and pull it out, or do you want another look at it before we send it out? Because like to kind of get this out sooner rather than later.
I think you need to get it out. If you
Getting it
feel
out
like
would be
you got
good,
enough input
yeah.
from council.
I think you have our input,
Okay?
and I'm going to look very, very closely at the application.
You might get a sneak peek at it before it goes out.
Well, I mean, you could send it out and we can not reply all.
Well, and I guess my request is if we
Wordsmith
do
the
that,
darn
then
thing.
it's 24 to 48 hours
Right.
return. So
Yeah.
as long as we have a deadline that comes back.
And I would express an interest in definitely asking that question about, are you a homeowner, are you a renter? Because we can't ask about socioeconomic status, but there is a pretty good correlation between renters and being lower socioeconomic status. So I think that could be one way that we try and get some better demographic representation on this committee.
And we managed to do that with the CPAC.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about a shortened, simpler form for the existing CPAC, the 6 folks that would apply, and then the larger form for the at-large members. We sort of know who our CPAC members are and where they're coming from for the most part.
And your expectation is that we will have 6 people interested, but I don't hear you saying all of them are going to be interested and council is going to have to do a selection process.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know if we're going to have 6 interested or if the 6 that are interested are folks that the council would want to appoint, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of weighing that has to go into that.
But I guess you're asking, are you expecting to have 8 interested or 10 interested, or?
Right.
You haven't gotten
We're
those.
not going to have 10 interested,
Okay.
but there's a possibility we would have 7. There's also a possibility we would have 4.
Or,
Yeah.
There's also been
Just wait
some,
and see what happens.
Yeah.
there's been some internal horse trading amongst the members of, oh, you care about my thing? You can go to all the meetings, and I'm going to skip out on this one. So I've heard from a couple people of, oh, so-and-so's going to attend, so I'm not participating. So I think we'll get some of that as well.
Yeah.
But let's see where we end up, and we can address it if we run into the problem.
As long as we aren't fixing anything in stone right now, I mean, I think once we see what we've got in terms of application, you still can adjust, whether it's 7 at-large or
Right.
5
Right.
CPAC.
Yeah.
We've got some
Or
flexibility.
the other way around, or whatever.
Yeah, or the other way around, right. I would just recommend against, going with a 24-member committee or something like that. 12 is a lot anyway, but it's okay. So, any other questions, concerns? We're getting pretty good at this kind of process, I think. We've done it a few times now. Vision, CPAC.
And I don't think that anybody has actually said this between the last 2 presentations, so I just want to make sure people understand why we're waiting until mid-February in order to close the pools. So we don't run a pilot during January. We wanted to make sure that we did get this out as far and wide as possible. So if you're watching this tonight and you know of someone, please make sure they're connecting in. They do not have to wait. We would love to get their applications early, but we do want to make sure we're getting into every household.
yeah.
Might be a conversation we want to have when we do the budget, is to talk about whether we want to revisit that concept,
Which concept?
the concept of only having 11 pilots.
Yeah, we can absolutely talk about it. Part of what will be changing is that we'll have an additional staff person in that office. In the past, December is awful for us in terms of our events, and it was next to impossible for us to be able to create the kind of content that we would need to put out a January pilot. So we're happy to come back and talk about that now that there will be an increased staff presence in that office, but that has been the reasoning in the past.
But even with the other staff person there, there's still the same amount of community projects that have to be put together. Plus, there are holidays in there that take people out for days at a time.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the main reasons why there hasn't been a January.
I mean, would a January pilot just get lost in the shuffle?
Yeah.
Well, and we can talk about it. I think that that's all.
Right,
It's a
but let's look at
conversation.
all of the aspects of it.
And because Kelly hasn't thought about it before, I don't, or at least before tonight, that I don't
Yeah.
really want to bring it up and talk about it till she's had some time with her staff. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, Council 2020 Committee Assignments, a discussion. This will be led by our Assistant City Manager, Kelly Brooks.
It's been so long since you gave us a giant spreadsheet.
That's sarcastic. I do love giant spreadsheets. So, thank you. Okay, so this is the first you've seen of this, so I don't expect you to be able to give me all of your comments and feedback today, and that's okay. But I did just want to get it in your hands and let you know what I have changed or attempted to change about it. I'm fairly certain there's some things I've missed. But I have gone ahead and moved everything that was created a new column, moved everything that was as it was in 2019 into the 2019 column. I have kept everything as is in 2020. It doesn't mean it has to stay as is, but I just went ahead and replicated it. The one thing I did change was the C4 membership, because you had recently voted on that. I did go in and pull the updated committee rosters for JPAC and MPAC and those folks. So those should be relatively up to date. The one...
Impact and impact, we don't.
We don't.
Right, but I had them blank. When we talked last year, it was sort of said, we'll update in the spring, because they weren't done yet, so.
Plus, we've always had them on this list. We don't appoint a lot of the things on this
Yeah,
list.
true.
Right.
True. Yeah.
And,
But I mean, we can't update them because we don't know.
well, we have, when I came on council, the way that worked was that the council decided that somebody would attend those meetings.
Oh, attending them, yeah, but I meant JPAC and...
Right, but it made a difference when there became an opportunity at
Yeah.
C4 to be on, to say, yes, I've been attending Impact for the last 2
Exactly.
years,
Right.
so I'm up to speed.
Right. Well, I remember when you used to come to C4 all the time before you were actually appointed, and it made it really easy at that point in time, because you were already, as well as MPAC. You'd been coming to that while I was sitting on MPAC as a citizen rep.
So one thing that I thought about after I printed 10 copies of this huge spreadsheet is I'm not sure that I have not seen the district advisory board on here. If you see it, the NCPRD, what we're going to talk about. So I did a quick scan. I didn't see it. If that's true, when I go do my word search,
I thought it was on here because I didn't
Hilda, can you get closer? Can you get closer?
Closer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it because I remember,
oh, it's right here. It was on page 8.
okay.
Better than I thought it was.
Thank you.
So that one I need to make sure. For some reason, I didn't carry the alternate of Lisa over, so I need to do that. So, yeah, this is it. I don't know that you're going to have a lot of changes, but I bet there are things you're on right now that I have not included. I don't have the T2020 task force on here because it came up after this list was developed.
Should be put on here.
But I can add it on there.
We'll be continuing to do that
And
for the
the-
duration.
On page 1, the Clackamas County Affordable Housing and Homeless Task Force, we've finished our responsibilities.
We're done?
So that committee is completed
Okay.
its tasks.
And on C4 Metro, I suspect that they'll have another election process to determine who the co-chair will be. I don't think they'll just automatically port
No.
Kathy into.
I hope not.
I just appointed you to it because I was controlling the spreadsheet.
I'll let Trent know. That'll be cool.
I'll send an email. Yeah, that's true. I probably should just assume that. Yeah, so take a look, see if there's any, well, number one, if you think of anything right now, tell me. Or I was assuming the library construction task force can come off.
Yep.
We opened it.
It's done.
On page 4, JPAC Finance Subcommittee, you're no longer on JPAC at this point. Are you still on the
I am
subcommittee?
no longer, well, the Finance Committee went away, and that's what sort of T2020 sprouted out of.
Okay.
So-
Should we rename that to
So we
T-
should just
call that
Just put it
T2020.
Put T2020 in and get rid of the JPAC finance.
I kept it just because I didn't call to see if they killed it. The JPAC Finance Subcommittee, it's not a zombie, but it comes back
It's true.
every 3 to 4 years. Like, so there'll be
Okay.
something that needs to be discussed, and then they'll pull it together. I can't guarantee it's this membership. So I was just keeping it on.
But at the time, I was the alternate to
Yeah.
JPAC from Clackamas
So I should pull
cities,
it.
or
I'll-
Clackamas cities, and I am no longer the alternate, so
I'm gonna delete it.
even if that happens, I don't know that I would necessarily be on it.
Okay, I'll delete it, and I'll just add T2020.
So I can give you a couple updates. So on the, I'm an alternate on the 2001-2003 rulemaking advisory to the state board. And I'm on the technical advisory committee for the subcommittee for that group for 2003. So HB 2003 is the one for production strategies. And then that's a pretty good commitment that takes me away from, takes me down to Salem. So the community collaboration group, I went a few times, and then that one is ongoing. They meet at 1:45 to 2:45 at Rowell Middle School. I just simply can't get to that as often as I would like to. It wasn't, the meetings weren't not valuable. They're having good conversations there about issues that I think we care about. I didn't see any, real, other than networking. I think basically it was a networking opportunity. I didn't see really any, policy or, real partnerships. It wasn't that kind of a group. But if someone else is interested, I would not discourage you from going, because I do think it's a good opportunity.
Who convenes that?
It's
Harry does, Harry Applebaum.
yeah, so it's the counselor at the middle school who convene, and it's a sort of a moving, they've got, the invitation is huge. I mean, they invite everybody to come to this thing, and at least the few times that I was able to attend, it wasn't a huge group, and it really is sort of like, kind of come to us when you have something you really want to share. We'll reach out to you directly if there's something we really want to know about. It's sort of like the membership isn't static, and people come in and contribute and learn as they're able. I just can't make it very often anymore.
I'm not sure it needs to be on this list. I do think it's a useful group. Harry reaches out to me on a regular basis when he has something that he thinks is appropriate for the city, or when he has questions for me. So I haven't been attending just because, for the reasons you've outlined, but I do think it's a really useful group, and I think he's incredible. I think the work he's doing is really important. So, but it's not something where we have to have a representative on
No.
it, and that's why I'm saying you may want to remove it. And then if, I can send out tomorrow, actually, the information to contact Harry if you'd like to be added to the listserv, and then you'll get invited to the meetings. Does that work?
Yeah, anyone can attend. They're very open, and like I said, not sort of a membership,
It sounds like, as a part of the engagement goal, one of my hopes is to have a better stakeholder list, different, different opportunities that you could go to on any topic. And it sounds like this might be a really good fit for that, just to have folks across the city understand that this is a group that gets together, and it's a great place to share information, potentially reach out to people. So if I could learn more about, if I could just get the details from, you can send it to me, and then I can try to make sure it's housed with the right staff people. And that way we have it. I'll take it off this list.
Kelly, on page 8 with the DAB, on the third column over, it keeps referring to it as the UPAB. I have no idea what that means.
I have no idea either.
Yeah, it's just some kind of spelling error or typing error that must have occurred at some point in time.
Okay, I'll fix it.
Yeah.
On page 5, the bottom, LOC, I am on the Energy Policy Committee, which I think they've changed the name, Energy and Environment, I don't know.
And I'm on the Community Development Committee again this year.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
She's still on community development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, under the DAB, I noticed it still says meetings on hold, so we just need to.
I'll update it. We get to talk about
So-
the DABs more.
There's GPI still on here? I thought we X-GPI or
I've
something.
been going to GP
You've been going to GPI? Okay.
sometimes when I
Okay.
don't have a conflict.
Okay.
It happens right after
The
Metro
mayors.
mayors in the same room, so it's,
Okay. Okay. For some reason, I thought we had dropped it or
no,
something.
we're still, I would, I think it's a dubious use, although Layla reached out to me sometime recently to say, hey, should I start coming to those meetings? And I was like,
I think that it's actually, it's a perfect moment in time. The reason that you remember this being a question is because we were looking at which economic development groups we were engaging with.
Oh, and
which
paying dues
memberships were we
to.
paying dues
Oh,
to.
right.
So we were actually planning on bringing this up during the budget process, just which ones are you finding the most useful? We didn't want to eliminate any memberships where you thought that the information was really helping you serve. But staff also has some that they use more than others, that if you didn't find them useful, we probably wouldn't be paying dues. So we'll be bringing that during the budget process. GPI is on that list, just as is this something that you want to continue to pay for? Would you like to move these funds towards to like the Clackamas Cities
Clackamas
group?
County Business Alliance.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I knew
we
that
can
that was
figure
coming back up with at least those two, maybe more organizations, yeah.
Yep. So we'll be prepared to speak to that probably in April.
Okay. Because, I mean, the mayor said he thought it was of questionable value, and I will say the two of those meetings that I attended during the gap between mayors, I also thought it was of questionable value, but Alma was a big fan of it.
she never showed up.
Layla has not felt that there is a huge value to her in this, so that's part of why we're coming back, is because honestly, Councilor Parks is often who we would look to as somebody who would know the organizations in the region that provide economic development service and business support. And so we've had that conversation with her. We just want to make sure that we give you a chance to weigh in.
I just noticed I still have urban for Nickowik, right? I need to take,
No urban in Nickeywood.
no urban and Nickowik, so I'll take that
No
out.
urban in Nickeywood. Which, well, we can finish this. I do want to hear, I understand there's some Kellogg movement, so, that's our meeting next week, huh?
That's the study session.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
Don't you have a meeting tomorrow? with-
Oh, yeah, we have a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a meeting. I have a meeting.
You have a meeting? I heard from Neil, I'm like.
Yeah. Yeah, we're meeting with Regional Solutions tomorrow. This is my attempt to kind of bridge the, Nickeywood has got a grant for an e-web process to do a collaborative process around dam removal. And we had initiated a process, or you all had initiated a process with Regional Solutions some time ago. So this is me kind of bringing everybody together and saying, okay, your table needs to have state agencies. These are the state agencies. How are we structuring this, and how are the state agencies going to involve in this collaborative effort? And so that's the meeting tomorrow. I'm sure it's going to be great.
I hope so. I hope so.
Should the Downtown Milwaukee Business Association be on this list? I'm just wondering why we have Rotary on here and not that.
Because there's no city councilor that attends those meetings. They prefer not, the business.
If you want to start attending, we'll add it.
Business people, not elected
Oh,
officials.
well, I'm not welcome, I see.
Welcome, but, you know.
The discussion, so we do have a new DMBA chair, and that is Rory from Nerds to Go. I met with him on
where?
Monday. From
Nerds to Go.
Oh, great.
You're Rory. Yeah, the one
My
working.
computers lives now.
Yes. His computer is living. I walked in and they were working. And he and I had a great conversation about where he'd like to take the organization and how he'd like to see it grow. So they were talking, they're going to set their goals. They'll be back here in probably February to talk with all of you about where they want to take the organization for the next year. But in that discussion, we did talk about the fact that they're an outside agency. They like that autonomy. They like their ability to to influence us through their process, but they also did mention that they like that city staff come to a meeting a month. So it may be an interesting time to ask Rory whether or not he'd like to have somebody. And we can email that
Yeah.
and come back to you before you finalize this list.
Yeah,
if you'd
that'd be
like.
great. I mean, it was an open question. I just was wondering what the reasoning was, but February sounds like a good time to talk about it.
Thank you.
So Valeria, on page 9, Valeria
Oh,
is
I still
still
have
on
Valeria.
for the HSCC Homeless Solutions, I guess there's 3 Cs. Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County. They are having the open house, the February meeting at our library next month, so that's exciting. I don't know if anyone, and I've been
Christina's going to
working
be
with,
there.
Christina is going to be there. Is she also plugged in, though? I don't know. Have we informed them that Valeria is no longer, and Christina is? And so has she been going to the steering committee?
She actually, the reason I know this today is because we've been talking about Storyline and we've been talking about
Right.
their displays. And I had sent it to staff asking if that would be a way for a tool for us to use in our public process. She came back and she said, oh yeah, I'm going to the meeting already. And I didn't realize they're bringing the displays actually to the meeting
Yeah.
in February. So she was excited. So
And just to,
find out.
yeah, just to clarify, those are different meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is sort of like the bigger, they do large, and then they also have smaller steering group, and Valeria was attending that at one point.
We'll check with staff.
Okay.
At the top of page 10, I believe, to the extent this is still meeting, it's Counselor Falconer and not me.
Oh,
I mean, I'm not sure that regional, they hired some consultant to do some survey
Yeah.
or
Oh,
something.
Yeah, I'm doing that with the governance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how often that still meets, but
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we're,
is it?
yeah, the only reason you didn't get the update from the last one was because we canceled the meeting because the draft document that, well, long story short, you'll get it when it's actually in a form that we all agreed to.
okay, thank you. I got that one. Is that it for now, or do you want, and again, really, I know you're getting this today, so take a look at it. If you see anything else, just shoot me an email and I'll update it. Thank you for
Thanks.
reviewing it. Okay. I'm your next item.
Indeed you are. Council input on legislative and regional issues, a discussion.
Yeah, so we do this one whenever we're going into session. So I'm going to spend a pretty brief amount of time on the legislative piece. It's a short session. But we do have a regional item to discuss. So I'm going to pass out one thing for
Oh,
legislative.
Kelly, I'm sorry. I think did we get this last time in electronic format? Can we again?
You absolutely can. Thank you.
That's a good idea.
The chart?
The chart.
Oh.
Just so I can take another look at it.
How about I'm going to do these changes, and then I'll send it. The ones you just gave me, and then I'll send it out to you all. Thank you. Last time, I sent it out in advance so that we could catch things first, which is a nice way to do it. Sorry, I didn't do it that way this time. Okay, so it's short session time. This is just a little calendar so that you can get just a sense of when things are starting and ending. The only 2 bills that I know about right now, as you can see from the calendar, the legislative, the LC dead date for drafts isn't until this Friday. So I don't know all the bills.
That's not this Friday,
Or
that's
sorry,
next Friday.
Next Friday, sorry. Thank you. I don't know, I don't have all the bills but the ones that I've heard that are of interest to us is anything related to climate, which I'm going to defer to Councilor Heisey and Mayor Gambra to chime in on that. But my understanding is sort of a scaled back Portland-focused proposal in an effort to head off potential ballot measures. So there's some discussion happening around that topic, which is related to a council goal. And the other one that directly relates to us is the NCPRD legislation that we've talked about, which is narrowly crafted. It doesn't specifically change anything for us, but allows NCPRD to, or Happy Valley to leave the district. So those are the two that are on my short list of things that are tied to issues concerning us. But this is the time to tell me that I'm missing things. So
I haven't looked at LOC's newsletter in a couple of weeks, but they usually give us a list of things they're watching. I guess I'd be interested.
None of that's happened at this point.
And I went and looked, and I didn't see anything, or I would have given it to you today.
Okay.
So I think we're in a little bit of a,
Staffers.
I don't know, it wasn't in the bulletin as much this time, and everything on the site right now is really related to 2019. It's not designed, the short session is not designed to move much. So it won't be like regular session, but I did want to just provide an opportunity if you're being asked, if there's anything out there where you've been asked to weigh in, or you would expect letters of support that need to be signed, or something that you're wanting us to send correspondence in that you'd like me to be paying attention to, let me know. But those were the two that I thought would fall into that category.
Well, so there were a handful of bills that kind of got horse traded out of the last session after that whole Republicans walk out thing. And one of them was the gun control stuff. And I'd be interested to know if that's coming back in any form this session. I hope it is.
I don't know. Don't know. I didn't see, and again, the extent of my legislative research was kind of really looking at news articles and trying to get a sense of who, because there wasn't the LLC publication, what was on people's hot lists. I know that, like, the driver's license, so the bill that Gorsuch introduced last time that you all talked about related to not revoking someone's driver's permit due to a traffic violation, that's coming back. But I didn't see anything related to the gun control measures. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It just didn't pop up for me as one of the ones that looked like it was coming.
So there's a couple that I am aware of because the mayors are tracking. One has to do with, let's see if I can get this right, whether we're required to pay prevailing wage on projects that are in, what's that new zone where there's, I think it's federal money, federal tax rebate money. It's like maybe it's state money. There's
There is a bill talking about bully and about prevailing wage as a part of projects. We can get that from Layla. I
Yeah,
don't actually have the number or the information, but we can find it.
I'm blanking now on the name of the, it's a something zones.
Economic opportunities?
Enterprise zone.
Enterprise zones, thank you.
Well done, well done.
So any project done in an enterprise zone, is it, or is it not have to do prevailing wage? And of course, most of the mayors are leaning towards not. But that's coming up on the carbon bill. The last conversation I had with somebody in the know is that there are, I believe, 4 versions that are being floated. And then there's what may go to, well, what is one of them, one of the ballot measures made it past the Secretary of State. So that is hanging too. So that's, I mean, the hope is that that's enough of a hammer hanging over the heads of the Republicans that they're willing to pass something or allow something to be passed, not that they'll pass it.
Okay, so find out more about the enterprise zones. Check and see if I can get a little bit more beta on any gun control legislation that might be coming back. You all will tell me, I think. I'll hear from you all in terms of needing any expectation around weighing in on a climate whenever it starts to distill down into whatever's moving. If you could, and then I can try to bring that to the group.
And I think Senator Taylor is running the process on the prevailing wage bill.
And I'm going to go,
Was there, what did they end up doing last year on PERS and stuff? She was running that process, and did they?
They did.
Oh, yeah, they
Took that really, really ugly vote.
Yeah.
And it passed, and it was theoretically, I mean, that's, Betsy Johnson said if you don't do that, you won't get the vote on the school funding bill that you need from me.
so I'll look for those things. This is just a warning. It's going to go fast. So we'll have a much clearer picture of what exists and doesn't exist, it sounds like, after the 17th, just in terms of bills. And then the first chamber deadline is, for posting is the February 7th. The next deadline is the 13th, the 20th, the 20th. I mean, it goes fast. So you'll know what's alive and not relatively early in the process. And then it'll be over. Okay. Anything else on this item before I move into
NCPRD?
CPRD? Okay. Yeah, so tomorrow night, I'm going to pass two things around. Sorry for all this paper that I didn't give you in advance. I'm giving you two items. One of them is a memo from the facilitator that's been, it's with the county, who's been working with the DAB to try to craft bylaws, new bylaws for the District Advisory Board to NCPRD. The second item is a Word doc. It's a little cheat sheet for me to try to make it easier to talk through essentially what's in the memo. So you don't need to worry too much about the memo. I just wanted you to have it as background. I'm going to walk through this, and then I'm largely going to turn it over to Councilor Parks, who's been doing the Lord's work, chairing this discussion. So the group, the DAB, I think, as you know, had been on hiatus for some time. It has been entirely focused on updating its bylaws to both reflect the departure of Happy Valley, which was most likely to occur, and to provide greater representation to unincorporated areas, which had been the rallying cry that the county had heard for some time. Where we are at right now is there's a meeting tomorrow night. That meeting doesn't currently call for a specific vote, but I think it's headed for votes. And I believe we're in a position where we either need to accept the modified membership proposal in some form, or no, or argue to modify it in some way, or reject it.
So wait,
Yeah.
the DAB's meeting tomorrow, or the Board of County Commissioners
DAB is meeting tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
And this is all still advisory to the Board of Commissioners, who serves as the board of NCPRD. So that's why we needed to talk to you about it today, is because this meeting is tomorrow, and if Councilor Parks needs to kind of go in and represent the view of you all accordingly. So on the left.
If I might add to
Yeah.
that, too, and I would expect a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners fairly soon, when the facilitator sent the memo out about the action that had been taken to date with the DAB, then County Administrator Gary Schmidt got back to Laura Zentner, who's the director of that department, and said, please schedule a policy discussion meeting with the BCC as soon as possible. So I just have a feeling that will be within the next couple of weeks, so.
So on the left is how things have been. And I did some quick math. So if we, at the maximum level, got every seat for someone in Milwaukee that we could have, we would have been at about 22%. You can see that the major change with if Happy Valley had done the same, if they'd gotten the maximum amount of seats, and the reason why I have to say it that way is because there were a couple seats that could go in or out. It just, then we would have been at 44%. So this is the situation that we knew we had, which is now we are the only city. It is the thing I keep saying to staff, and it's what I included in our testimony to the NCPRD board when we weighed in on the settlement. It's just uncomfortable. It's just an odd place for us to be. We are alone. We are the only city. And so some of the representation decrease that you're seeing here is just that fact. There's only one of us now. But in the prior world, we had about 22% of the votes. And in the new world, what we do have that we didn't have before is 2 dedicated seats. So we have a counselor and we have another seat. This had been important to us and I think continues to be important to provide hopefully a direct connection between a PARB member and the DAB as well. It doesn't have to be that way, but we have 1 elected and 1 non-elected seat. So that is now certain, whereas in the past it was not. We do overall have less, we're at 18%, because we have added some members in the unincorporated areas. I will just jump down to my questions and comments, and then I'm going to open it up for discussion. The things that I think at a minimum we need to address, no matter what, is I find some of the language in the memo confusing around who nominates and who appoints, and I just want to get that cleaned up. I want to make it clear that our 2 seats are nominated by this body and come from us, and then are affirmed and appointed by the board. They don't go through a different application process, so that would go for both. The same thing applies to, there's a selection committee for the unincorporated seats, and I just want to make it clear that section shows that the Milwaukee seats are nominated from here, and they don't go through that process. I think that will be relatively easy to clean up. It's just something that I think we need to do. The next item that I'm struggling with, that I would like to continue and ask Councilor Parks to advocate for, the district master plan identified as severely underserved seat. I will tell you the intention of that is to get someone from an underserved Parks area, according to the master plan. When I went and read the master plan, I don't understand who that is. And it may be because I just don't know how to read it. It's always possible. But I'm a little concerned about having something in bylaws that is challenging for me to understand.
So they don't have a map that says these are the least served areas?
It may exist, but I'm not finding it. So I think at a minimum tomorrow night, it needs to be, hey, what are you talking about? What is this? If you're going to write it in bylaws, like, what do you mean by underserved? I think there's potentially an opportunity. They're underserved. The draft bylaws that they're working on right now talk about the fact that there are lots of different populations that are potentially underserved: seniors, low income, people of color. I think there's a way for this seat to be really helpful in balancing the board. If they're going to balance it this way, I think they would need to prove that it's a thing, that it has a definition.
Yeah.
So I think at a minimum, those 2 things need to be kind of tightened up.
I would take that kind of a step further. I would be uncomfortable with this concept of just 6 residents from anywhere in unincorporated. You could have 6 residents that are all next door neighbors, east of 205. And 0 representation from Oak Grove.
True, you could.
But that's not what that's going to have right at this juncture.
Right.
There are.
With Paul. Yeah.
There are certain characteristics, and it doesn't show up on here, I don't think, but characteristics that, I agree, that could happen. Not denying that at all. But there was a list of certain characteristics that they would look for in nominees or then appointees. And demographics was, a big part of that, as well as, I can't even offhand.
Geographic distribution has to be a thing.
Yeah.
I think they should have zones. I think that they should somehow create a way so that they make sure that there's, people.
Well, they did have the zones. Why are they getting rid of the zones?
There currently still are existing zones. So, for instance, Milwaukee is Zone 1, and our UGMA is part of that. Happy Valley is Zone 3, actually, I think, and their UGMA is part of that. So if Happy Valley goes away, the city, then their UGMA still is there, which is part of the unincorporated that they're talking about here. And then the Oak Grove, Oak Lodge, Dennings Lodge area is the other zone. And I think I've got it right that Happy Valley is 3, because it makes sense that it would have been 1 and 2, and then they added 3 when Happy Valley came in.
The funding zones, nothing changes.
No.
The membership that you're pointing to, if you look on the left, it shows you that there was some geographic consideration in the way the membership laid out. That is now being removed. So I think if you're telling, and the consensus of the group is, and Counselor Parks, you're okay with communicating that we feel like something has been lost there, and you're going to have to beef up other elements of the bylaws to ensure that there's geographic representation if you're going to leave it this open. Is that
On the memo that was provided, if you notice under B, it just says members who are residents of the unincorporated
Right.
areas within the district, but it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't, we can certainly, ask that more clarification be given in that and more specifics, be denoted.
Yep.
And then, of course, the next one is a member from the area named in the district master plan as the most severely underserved. And like Kelly had said, that it's not even ambiguous. It's just a loose term that doesn't have any specific meaning somewhere.
Well, but Kelly was alluding to underserved being other than, potentially other than geographic. But here, the way this is worded, area named in the district plan as the most severely underserved, I think it's geographic.
Oh, that's absolutely what it's intended to be.
Oh, okay.
I just went and looked, and I
Okay.
can't find it.
Okay.
So it's either
not.
because I don't know how to find it, which I will reserve the right that it exists and I just didn't find it. But for it to be as specific as it is, I should have been able to find a
Yes.
map to that level of
That's the
service.
point.
And I should be able to see and understand how when they update the master plan, which they know they need to do, how this definition for this member is going to work.
Yeah.
Because these bylaws extend past this.
Right.
And so I find it just like a problem that they need to sort through. If that's what they want, then there's probably a way to get at it, but the definition they're using was hard for me to find. So I think that's all.
Okay.
But I was just broaching the topic of it is an opportunity to talk about underserved in a different way.
I mean, there's still, as I understand it, still breaking out the fees into the different zones, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Our UGMA, Happy Valley's UGMA, Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge.
Yep.
That's literally what the designation's for, whatever those zones are, however that breaks down population-wise. Let's say Oak Grove is 2/8 of, the committee, then there should be 2 committee members, right?
Yeah.
So, Wilda, yeah, you've been at all these,
Is it Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge, Oak Lodge, that whole area, there's maps, I don't have them with me, but, so we're 21,000 population, that area is something like 55,000, I think, that sounds
And
kind
what's
of
our
right.
UGMA?
Our UGMA,
It's another 30, isn't it?
I was
it's not
thinking it
another,
was
it's not,
20.
it's not 30, I think it's another 15 or 20.
Yeah, I was thinking we would roughly
then Happy
double our
Valley's
population
UGMA.
when we picked that up.
I thought somewhere I heard we get to 50 with
Yeah.
that.
so why did they move toward, was there, I mean, I know discussion's been going on for months and months, so I may be asking you to go back many months, but why did they move away from zones representation, geographic representation to this lump sum of 6?
Well, it hadn't actually said zones in the past. I'm trying, let me try to visualize just how it was written, but it was, well, she's got it kind of here, but it was, the city of Milwaukee could appoint one person, and it didn't necessarily say it would be an elected person, but for years it has been. Before that, it was Lynn. So it's been different people. And the city of Happy Valley would appoint one person, and the Milwaukee Center would appoint one person. And then there would be 2 people from west of Highway 205, one of whom could live within the city. And in our case, for the last few years, that's been Susan McCarty, who is a wonderful business person at Great American Video, but she doesn't live in the city, but her business is in the city, so that was the connection there. And then 2 people also from the other side, one of whom could live in the city, and in Happy Valley's case, Suzanne Montalbano did live in the city. And then 2 members of the unincorporated community that wasn't in a city or the UGMA. So that was the Oak Grove, Oak Lodge, area. So they could have had, the unincorporated areas combined could have had 2, 4, could have had 6 representatives even at that point in time, coming from the different zones, if the people didn't live within a city. So
Why wouldn't it
But
be
there wasn't a discussion of giving like Happy Valley's UGMA 1, Milwaukee's UGMA 1, 3 or whatever to Oak
One in
Ridge.
Jennings
I mean, I do think under that old version, maybe Oak Lodge was getting shorted on representation
is
because
really-
that's a big area. That's a big population.
Which is really kind of how this whole revision of the bylaws started off. I think it actually started off because I kept pressing to have a seat for someone from our Parks and Recreation Board. And that wasn't happening. And at the same time, the realization that the actual major unincorporated area only had a couple of representatives. And yes, even I felt like, well, they should have more representation. I mean, not necessarily 5 or 6 people, but it should be, it should be more equalized representation. So defining where people would come from was actually, it was like a 2-meeting session that it took of the district advisory board just to try to get to that point.
If I might add, I think just overhearing the conversation at the meetings too, there's a strong, one of the most vocal representatives from the unincorporated areas is very adamant that it is unincorporated or not incorporated. The UGMAs, you were either in or you
Right.
were out.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of conversation about why are we parsing it out this way? You are in a city or you are out of a city. And so that's
Because
just,
whether,
I'm just,
whether
I'm-
you're
yeah,
in Milwaukee or not in Milwaukee, that neighborhood
yeah.
could end up with 0 representation, right? As could
Sure.
the neighborhood that's in, Happy Valley's UGMA. Or all of them could be all in Happy Valley's UGMA.
And it also doesn't recognize just they're different. I mean, the communities, not just geographically, dispersed, but they're different communities. I mean, the unincorporated area out in,
Of Happy Valley
Happy
is far
Valley
different from the
is
unincorporated
not
area.
nearly as urban as ours or, Oak Groves. I mean, those are different needs, that's just,
Yeah.
there's so many reasons why it should be
It really needs to have zones, and there needs to be representations from each of the zones.
All that said, I know that getting to this point has not been an easy process, so I would be interested in hearing your feedback, Wilda, on
what should be done.
what should be done and how much opportunity there actually is at this juncture to influence the outcome.
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that. I am not sure, to tell you the truth. It has been a challenge to work through the personalities that make up the district advisory board and the ancillary people that have input into the district advisory board. I actually felt and thought and spoke to, or tried to, at the last meeting and the meeting before that, that with Happy Valley leaving the district, that the 9-member committee that we had at that time, we've functioned very, very well over a number of years, or at least, fairly well. Everybody seemed fairly happy. And we all look at all of the projects within the district, and I tried to get interest from the facilitator and a couple of others that if it's not broke, why are we fixing it? What are we trying to do? And maybe at the most, at that point, we add like 1 or 2 other unincorporated people from that larger urbanized unincorporated area, and you leave the other. That didn't fly. So where we are right now, I think I am pleased that we get to select 2 people who we know will be appointed. they still would go, those nominations from us would still go to the Board of County Commissioners who sit as a district board, and they would bless them, so to speak, as well as the person that comes from the Milwaukee Center. And the person that comes from the Milwaukee Center, important to realize that that's not necessarily a Milwaukee resident nor somebody representing the city of Milwaukee. They're representing the Milwaukee Center that serves the entire district. It just so happens at this particular point in time that the person from there happens to live in the city of Milwaukee. That is not always the case, and it hasn't been the case in the past, so there's that. I think pushing back on there should be zones where they come from in the unincorporated, so we know, for instance, maybe one in Jennings Lodge, one in Oak Grove, one in Oak Lodge, one in the UGMA of, or maybe two in the UGMA of, one in the UGMA of Happy Valley, one in the UGMA of Milwaukee, and then if they still need 6, then 2 at large that can come from anywhere. I think that sounds like a more fair distribution and should appease the CPOs that are in those other districts also. Because the other thing they changed, or it's a recommendation for change, is that so let me back up. In the past, when it's time for nominations, they do it like they do almost any county committee. People submit nominations, and then the government, I can't think what they call it, but the government affairs department of the county, working with maybe 1 or 2 people from whatever department it is, whether it's economic development or parks and recreation or whatever, then they vet the nominations and they select the people who then are recommended to the Board of County Commissioners. So in the DAB's case, they've recommended also, I think it's on here, I think it's on the back side of this, a change in how those people are actually, once the nominations come in, or the applications, how they're selected, and change that to be 2 county staff, so it would probably be somebody from government affairs and somebody from Parks and Recreation, and then 2 members of the DAB, and they didn't specify who. Those would have to be selected by the District Advisory Board, although it does say that the chair of the District Advisory Board would be the person, in any county meetings. That's someplace in the bylaws that says that. So but then the other 2 people who would be vetting the applications would be representatives of the community planning organizations, the CPOs that are within the district. So that's within the unincorporated district. I guess the thought in that, keeping in mind, is that the incorporated place, which is us, we would be selecting our people, anyhow. And so we wouldn't necessarily need to have somebody that served on that selection committee or that, applicant committee.
Is there a CPO sort of in our UGMA?
There is, but it's an inactive CPO at this moment. It's the North Clackamas CPO, and it's not active at the moment. So there are, in fact, I think a total, of 5 CPOs within the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, but 3 of them are active right now. And those are in that urbanized area, like Jennings Lodge and...
Oh, so the CPO on the other side of 205
is not
active either? Oh.
That's my understanding.
Well, that kind of throws a wrench in the work. Well, that's why they're not going to get represented, because they don't have the way to outreach and...
In lots of zones, it says somebody has to come from
Right.
Yeah.
this area. This is why I'm saying that, because there's no... This is going to end up...
It's going to end up being all Oak Grove, Oak Lodge, and those people not being represented.
We can certainly,
And these people are probably more, the people on this, between us and 205 are probably the underserved areas.
Right. Well,
one of our
District Advisory Board members has looked at where all the parks are in the district and broken down each area, and was surprised to find that in part of that urbanized, unincorporated area where many folks are under the impression that, well, there's just no parkland. There are actually, I think it's either 5 or 6 parks. They may not be huge regional parks, but there are 5 or 6 parks. But regional parks are taken care of through North Clackamas Park, and then, of course, out in Happy Valley, the stuff out there, and Milwaukee Bay Park, and that's, that's still high. The other thing, and I just want to be sure that you note this, the other thing that there was more than considerable discussion about is the final result of last month's meeting was that in addition to Milwaukee getting 2 people and having these unincorporated, that an elected member of the Board of County Commissioners would sit as a voting member of the District Advisory Board.
It's a redundancy.
If they live within the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation
Well, actually,
District.
it says if there isn't one, they get to appoint one, who will be a voting member.
I fundamentally do not understand why an elected official from the board, it's just 2 votes. It's 2 votes.
Well, that was part of what I and others there continued to discuss. Their questions back to me were, so why should the city of Milwaukee have a vote then?
Because we are not the Board of County Commissioners.
I said, we're the landowners, it's like, we're your tenant, more or less. You care for our property. So I could understand that. But, so that was
Well, yeah, you're not a
huge
decision maker
compromise. I mean, it
of
was,
what comes from this body goes to
Right.
An advisory
decision.
board
C is
to-
the,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they were
Wes
advising
has-
us, then they would have an argument,
Yeah.
but they are not advising us. We are not the final arbiters. So
I understand that.
I know you know.
Yeah.
well, so Wilda, do you have enough head nods from us on,
Well, I think we need a list of what our I think we need to give her a good list of what our objections are.
Board member being a voting member,
Kelly's been-
zones for the unincorporated.
Right.
The severely underserved is not defined, and if we have zones, then maybe that takes care of that, because then you can, again, if you said, okay, 1 from each of the, like 5 zones, then that still leaves 2 that could be 2 at large from anywhere, maybe anywhere in the district, but they're probably going to say anywhere in the unincorporated, and I mean, I could live with that, that's fine, but anyhow, that's my thought.
But so they've done away with at-large, because they've just lumped it all in. Yeah, it's all at large. Yeah, I guess that's what they've
All at
done.
large except in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
the council want to say anything about the elected official?
Yes.
I think we should. I mean,
we should object.
that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Yeah, I made a note of that, too.
The other piece to note, and I looked at the minutes just to make sure it hadn't come up, but this is actually in our interlocal. So the makeup of this board actually sits in our interlocal. So this actually is something where you have an ability to vote and to weigh in on this. That's Jim Bernard reasserted that at the meeting, that he respects that Milwaukee actually does have a vote right now on how we do this process. So I think that this is very helpful for you to provide both to staff and to Councilor Parks going into this meeting, is that right now you're not comfortable and
Yeah.
you'd like to see some amendments. Are we reading that correctly?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to be sure and note another thing about deadlines, too. So when they started the District Advisory Board back up, which must have been back in like July or something, and charged us with our first responsibility is to update the bylaws and especially update the composition of that. And Chair Bernard said, if it's not done by December, then the Board of County Commissioners will do it. Now, he has since then said, okay, well, we'll see where we are, in December. And that's why it's coming to them sometime in January, because we just made this first decision point. I expect that the prescribed program for tomorrow night, the agenda for tomorrow night is probably to pick up where we left off and continue on with other issues that are in the bylaws. None of them are really substantive, but there are a couple of them that I think there'll be a lot of discussion about. So what may happen, and we just being prepared for it, is that tomorrow evening when I say we have concerns and we would, so you guys help me out with language here, if we were voting right now, we would not vote for this.
Correct.
Right? So we have concerns, and we need to have these pieces addressed before we move on to anything else in the bylaws. Now, I could get totally shut down. It could be the beginning of a good discussion. It could be that, it's like, okay, we obviously can't reach a consensus. It's going to the Board of County Commissioners. So there could be any kind of outcome in it. I have no idea which way that might go, but,
Either
I think
way-
just go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh.
I believe just based on having watched this play out a little bit, you'll, if I've got the 3 that I was tracking, the 2 I wrote down, plus the zoning, some kind of geographic distribution within unincorporated areas, I think that you would probably have pretty successful, say, we talked with council, these are the major issues that they raised. We would need to see those addressed prior to being able to agree to these revisions to the bylaws. I think they'd all and start to work through it. I think the zoning thing, they probably would push back, but I think we'd have really good reasoning for why that's consistent with their reasoning for wanting to have an increase in representation. So I think that probably would go okay. The elected representation from the board has been, nuclear is not the right word. It has been
Toxic.
It has been the toxic topic, I would say, throughout. And I don't know where and why and how I came to that point, but the actual movement away from that is what allowed everything else to proceed. After that was done, every other topic could proceed. It's that weighted of a topic, and it's just the way the conversations played out. So I will just tell you that if Councilor Parks reintroduces that, it'll blow. So that's all.
I guess a question would be, because we've had this conversation at West too. Why in the world would a vote? Why would you need a voting member of the board? We're advising the board. Yeah. The board. Maybe there's a member of the board who doesn't appreciate that, but I don't think that's widely held on the board. So if it doesn't get through DAB, I guess this is sort of another one of those, let's be prepared to memorialize in a letter stating all of these things, because we'll just go directly to the board.
Well, I was going to ask, so Anne's been using Utah speak by calling it interlocal, but she means IGA.
We all knew what you meant.
I knew what she was talking about.
So has the fact that the IGA speaks to this and Milwaukee has to agree to it come up in the DAB discussion? Okay. Okay.
And Chair
Yes, it
Bernard
has,
actually said
and
that.
along with the conversation of, well, why should Milwaukee even be here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was our Parks District that this became this?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I have tried to say that. I have said it. I admit I was very rude one night and
No one else thought she was
got in a
rude,
shouting
but-
match.
With Paul?
The other county commissioners are there in the room hearing this same thing, and there hasn't necessarily been, that I've seen pushback from the county commission on this point of view, which is that we have to have a commissioner on the board in order to participate at this level, because this is where the decisions are being made about parks. That's the
Liaison,
argument.
just like,
Liaison makes perfect sense.
and that's what they
Well,
do.
that's what they had in the past, and that was what many of us were shooting for.
Right.
And it truly became apparent at the last meeting that nothing was going to move if there wasn't some compromise on that particular issue.
And I just to add a little oomph to what Kelly's saying, staff hears you, and I think that we can easily deliver this message. I think it's just going to probably explode, and we're okay with that. We're just making sure that we're really transparent about that.
Maybe the way we address this then is to go after the things, all the other things, get those to happen. And then, when it goes to the board, that's when we submit our letter and say, we
Yeah.
don't think there should be an elected.
Yeah. And we can absolutely do that. But I think that, Counselor Parks will have an opportunity tomorrow night.
Just
to
so that the
speak to these
process
issues.
can move, right? So we get all the other things fixed. Because and trust me, I've sat now for 6 years on boards with Paul. He can literally stop anything in its tracks.
He hasn't stopped.
Wait till he gets his back
running
up.
against him.
I mean, I think,
Oh, I didn't say that.
yeah. I think it makes, yeah. I mean, I think maybe it's better, I mean, Counselor Parks can say something like, I heard concerns on the part of my fellow city councilors about this, without like saying, no.
You're not, I agree with that. I don't want to be in a position to where they say, but
You didn't
Counselor
say
Parks
anything.
was on the
We've already voted on
DAB.
this.
They already voted, she voted yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, we can't be in that position. where-
Yeah. But
Yeah, we can't be like sandbagging. I mean, we have to express some amount of,
Yeah.
We're also on camera.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Exactly.
there will be a number of people
It's
who are
not
watching
like
this
this
conversation.
is,
So I think for the sake of transparency,
I'm sorry.
I would think for the sake of transparency tomorrow, listing the comments and corrections that have been identified for 1 and 2, plus the geographic concerns in the unincorporated area, and then saying, also, there are ongoing concerns from my council about the redundancy of having an elected representative,
Yeah.
but you don't, I think you have to say it.
decision-making board
Right,
having a
okay.
voting member on the
Advisory.
advisory board.
To them.
Just so that if it's raised at a later date, that we were honest and
We've at
transparent
least
about it.
been honest and transparent with our thinking, I mean, which is,
Sure.
kind of,
But I guess what
What
I'm
I've
saying
been
is
saying
don't fall
all the
on your
time,
sword
no.
about that now.
no.
Well, and
No.
I do want to just reiterate for anyone who's watching or for that conversation, this at times has been painted as Counselor Parks having a concern. And what I have heard tonight is this is not a concern of Counselor Parks, this is a concern of 5 of my council members.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also just want to, point out that, we have pushed annexation, down the road a few times, and this is exactly, here we are, the city of Milwaukee, fighting for people who aren't even our residents.
Yeah.
Like, they're trying, what this proposes strips them of any opportunity to serve on an advisory board, that they pay taxes to fund this district, and they potentially are having zero representation on a really important board. Maybe we should talk about that, unincorporated Milwaukee.
Yeah. Okay, so you and I will talk at some point tomorrow, or?
Yes, I'm
You'll
going to
communicate with
clean
me.
up this and make it more, I may just turn it into a letter that you can have and hand out, just because I know the conversation can be a little hard to get points across, so that you have something you can hand out that touches on these things. And I'll send it to you, and you can
Yeah.
change it or edit it however you'd like.
Yeah. So help me with a thought that's going through my head, too. So I'm thinking that it would be fair and reasonable to get in touch with Scott Archer and Laura Zentner and say, we discussed this at the city council meeting last night, and just want you to know that there are some concerns that I intend to bring to the meeting when the meeting starts. on Thursday.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I had told staff as well, we have your proposal, we're going to have to talk to council about it. I'm not sure that council is going to concur with this direction. So the Council Parks may be needing to deliver that message back at the next. So I did tell
Okay.
them a little bit to let them know that this was a conversation that was going to be happening. So.
We can also send the link from tonight's meeting, just so that he can watch it in
Yeah.
its entirety before the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be beneficial. I just don't want to totally blindside, staff and/or the facilitator or, the other people. I'm not planning on sending out, whole thing to everybody. I just want to be sure that, that they know that.
It is a chance for me also, and I know that it's actually Kelly who has said it to me, Staff has actually been really lovely through this process of trying to help us all step through it. When we've raised concerns, they've addressed them immediately. So I just want to also be really transparent that the staff is trying to walk a fine line through this process and
Yeah.
give the autonomy to the DAB for this recommendation. But they are simultaneously very responsive and been great to work with.
Right. Well, and I don't want people to go away from this discussion with this big black hole painted in their minds about the district advisory board, because it's a very passionate, very caring group of people, and there's a lot of interest in in what's going on and us getting through this and getting on with our actual work of the district, which we haven't really been able to do. And all the members of the district advisory board are just really tuned into that, and they're working hard, towards that. And the Board of County Commissioners has generally had 2 to 3 people in the room at each of the meetings, and I've appreciated that, and I hope that continues also.
So the question in my mind is just the whole, that we're 18%, that, I mean, it's not a huge difference from 22%, but I do feel like, the point Kelly made at the beginning, like we're the only city. Like before, even though the last couple of years, our interests in Happy Valleys were maybe at odds somewhat, but, before, I think it was good having another city in there, and I don't know. I mean, I guess 18% is the best we can expect out of this. I mean, I'm really concerned about, I see them spending so much time and potentially so much money on Concord School. That just seems to be, I mean, that whole thing is going to be crazy expensive if they're going to have to seismically retrofit that building and everything else. And, the money they're spending for libraries down there and all of that, that I'm really worried, frankly, that we're going to get the shaft here like we did on libraries. And so
I can't imagine that the board, I mean, based on sort of, what they've said in terms of like, ensuring, geographic, representation, I just can't imagine that they'll accept this. I just cannot imagine that they're not going to require, some guarantee with some, equitable distribution of membership. Because you're right. I mean, if this board has potentially up to 6 members, from Oak Grove, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right, and that's why we need those zones.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the good discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then this will be a standing item. So if there are things that you're hearing about that you need discussed at the start of this item, please email them to me or whatever, call me so that I can make sure it's on my list.
Kelly, poor Scott, you need some water?
All right.
Oh, it's just.
All this coughing going on, I'm going to go home and take medicine.
Spray Lysol in the room.
You ready?
Exactly. So far, so
right.
good, but geez.
So join the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District in pulling invasive ivy and planting native plants and improving upland forest habitat at the Homewood Park Habitat Enhancement Volunteer Event on Saturday, January 11th from 9 a.m. to noon. Tools, gloves, and refreshments will be provided. The grand opening of the new Letting Library at its original location on 21st Avenue is this Saturday, January 11th. A ribbon cutting ceremony will begin at 10 a.m. and last for about an hour. But if you can't make the ribbon cutting, be sure to stop by and tour the library. There will be activities throughout the day. The Letting Cultural Forum season will kick off on Thursday, January 23rd from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the library. Amy Stewart, author of Cop Sisters on the March, will be the first speaker. Each event is free and are held at the library from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on the third Thursday of each month through November. Join the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and other volunteers in improving habitats at Spring Park and Alcock Island on January 25th from 9 a.m. to noon. Tools, gloves, and refreshments will be provided. Please join us to celebrate the grand opening of the Kronberg Multi-Use Trail on Saturday, January 25th from 1 to 2 p.m. Come out and walk or ride your bike on this new trail that provides a great connection to the trolley trail and downtown. New Oregon initiatives, including House Bills 2001 and 2003, have recently passed, aimed to provide additional housing choices and increase housing supply. As the state works to implement this important housing legislation, they are hosting community conversations, and one is coming up in Milwaukee that you don't want to miss. Join staff from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development and local leaders on Thursday, January 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Clackamas Community College Harmony Road campus to join the discussion. For more information about each of the events and others, please visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov.
So there are 2 safe open houses this month, I believe. There's one next Wednesday for Linwood, and isn't there one more later in the month? I was just going to the safe page trying to find it, but I'm not finding it. Let me go to the calendar. I can at least do next Wednesdays. I think it's 5:30 at Linwood Elementary on Wednesday, the 15th.
I believe it is next Wednesday. It's on our Facebook page, which I can get.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I've got the, go away.
My apologies.
Oh, it's not on the calendar, okay. Nope.
Yeah, I've seen the event go by on Facebook. I know it's there.
Me too. I'll get it. Hold on.
So Linwood Elementary, there's going to be the Linwood Avenue Safe Project. It's January 15th from 5 to 7 p.m.
Yes.
At Linwood Elementary, which is at 11909 Southeast Linwood Avenue. And then there is another one. There is.
Was that 42nd, or was that?
It is 42nd, and I don't remember the date. We have so many.
It's later in the month. It's
Yeah.
like at the end of the month, but, okay, well, we'll have another meeting before then, hopefully. We can announce it there.
My apologies, I don't have it. But I'll have it in 5 minutes when you don't need it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.